Okay guys, so I'm just going to introduce two new tools in Photoshop today. So basically what I have here is an image that I've actually never made any edits on before, so I'm just going to kind of go through this with you guys. So what I have over here is a folder with labeled color corrections, should be corrections. So what I have in here is all of these different layers that I've already added onto this image to get it how it looks now. Basically, when this image was taken on color film, and so it sometimes has some strange color casts. Sorry, that's my dogs in the background. So it sometimes has some strange color casts, so all of these are adjusting for that. Now what I'm going to do is turn this image black and white. I'm next going to turn this image black and white, so I'm going to do that by adding an adjustment layer here. Now what I'm going to do is go through here and just make any changes that I might want to. So I've messed around with this a little bit beforehand, and I've come to the conclusion that I really like what a yellow filter does. I enjoy how it separates the coat from the background, but what it also does is really darken her jean. Since it's a yellow filter, it's going to darken the opposite tone, so that would be blue. So what I'm going to do to correct for that is just come through and adjust here, and you can see how much more detail I'm able to pull out of her jeans. So I'm happy with that. And click close. What you may or may not be able to notice here is that there's a bit of a green cast to the image, and the reason for that is just the film had a little bit of a magenta color cast, so we're seeing that opposite reflect when I turn that into black and white. So what I'm going to do to correct is add a excuse me, that was incorrect. I'm going to add a color balance layer right here, and what we can do is come here to this green and magenta. Since I feel like I'm getting a green color cast, I'm just going to correct by very subtly scooting over the magenta tab. If I overdo it, you can see how it's going to start to go pink. So we don't want it to be pink because we want it to look neutral. Okay, great. So it's always important that our black and white images are looking neutral. You normally have this issue when you scan in film, but you guys are going to do that sooner or later. So, alrighty, now it looks pretty good. So what I am going to do now is I'm just going to go through and make sure that I'm in 16 bits per channel, which I already was. I should have done that at the very beginning, but I already knew that I was. But you guys should do that at the very beginning. You can also see here, it'll tell you how many bits per channel you're working in. So again, you just want that to be at 16. So now what I would do is I would come through with the spot healing brush to get all of this dust out of the composition. But I've already shown you guys how to do that. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to use some filters that I enjoy a lot. So first things first, I'm going to come up here, and you can see here how I can select all of these different items, which is great. The first thing I'm going to do is say convert to smart filter. Hit OK, and that's going to turn this into a smart object. Great, and that's indicated right here. You can also do that by having this layer selected, coming here and convert to smart object, or right clicking, and that same menu will open. So now that I've turned that into a smart filter, I'm going to go ahead and open my camera raw filter. Now you'll notice here that it's going to open this image without the black and white filter. That's okay, you'll just have to make the edits anyways. I normally actually use this tool at the very beginning of my workflow, and the reason is because I use another Adobe product called Bridge, and it's a great way to organize your photos. You can click through them and star them, and then you can open them right into Photoshop directly, and what it'll do is it'll open your image into this camera raw filter first. So I'm considering doing a tutorial on Bridge in the near future, so keep your eye out for that. So basically when you open this image into Camera Raw, you're going to be presented with this basic template, or this basic like menu, whatever you want to call it here. You've got exposure, contrast, highlight, shadows, all of that. I am going to go ahead and just leave those alone and make changes in Photoshop, because I like to do a levels layer so I can really see my histogram and actually know what's going on. Sorry, my dogs are being so annoying. Silence! Guys! I have to take them outside. Okay, they're locked away. So, great. So you can come through and make some adjustments to there. Something that I will do is check like my black point. If it's obvious that your image is like really flat, you can come in and just make some preliminary edits. But I leave the fine tuning to actually doing in Photoshop. Something I also like to do is use this clarity tool here. I think it adds like a nice separation to tones throughout. So you guys can use that if you'd like. So you can click through here. You also have this curve if you like to make edits that way. You can do some sharpening here, but I don't do sharpening here. I'm also going to show you guys how to use a sharpening tool that I like, but you always do it at the very end of your workflow, so I'm just going to let that be. I really don't use much of this. I might do lens correction. So something that you should be aware of when you're taking digital images is fringing or chromatic aberration. And you'll notice that in the very background of images, it'll come along like the highlights of trees specifically. This image was taken on a film camera, so you don't really get the same. Sorry, zoomed in on our boobs. You don't really get the same effect, but you would see it like on the edge of the grass or on the edge of the trees. And you can, if it's purple, you'll correct here, and if it's green, you'll correct here. You can also do this lens distortion, but I don't need to do that in this image, so I'm gonna leave that at 0. You can come through and do this effect. You can add grain to the image. This image is already taken on film, but for you guys that are using digital images, you can add some grain if you'd like to mimic that effect, since our darkroom got taken away from us, sadly. So, okay, the next function I want to show you is this transform tool. So it lives up here in newer versions of Photoshop. In older versions, it's going to live in this panel, but it's got that same logo. So what this image is really helpful for, I'm going to come back here and make sure I'm seeing the full image. Great. What this image is really helpful for is if you take a photograph and then you realize that your horizon line is crooked, you can use this rotate tool. So you'll see how that just rotates either way, which I do all the time, so I use that tool often. It can also correct for some like lens distortions here, specifically an effect called keystoning that you'll notice a lot when you take images of buildings. The building will kind of look like it's leaning away from you, so you can correct for that here. You'll notice as I move this around, you can see like the template in the background coming through. Don't worry about that. Basically, you'll just click OK, and then you'll crop that out when you get back into the main like Photoshop browser. Okay. So yeah, I want to show you guys those two things. You can come back to this menu, or where is the crop? Okay, here. And then you can crop the image here as well. So oh, what is this thing? Sorry, this is not the tool that I thought it was. Sorry, guys. Well, never mind. There's a crop function in here somewhere. I'm not sure where it is at the moment. Sorry, this layout is new. This is Photoshop 2020, and I've never had such fancy Photoshop, so some things I'm still figuring out. Okay, but you guys get the gist. So I'm just going to click OK when I'm happy with that. When it comes back, it's going to show up under here, under the camera raw filter. So that's great, and you can click on or off. So again, I made that crop. I'm actually going to re-click this because I want to show you guys what you would do if you used that, that transform tool, and you had something like that. Oh, I understand what that tool does now. Okay. But if you had something like that, where you've corrected the image in such a way that you have this little bit of like the canvas coming through. So you can see here it's given us this weird thing down there. All I would do is come in with the crop tool. And again, it's in width time, height times resolution. And I just keep these clear, and then you can adjust it however you'd like. And you can quickly crop that out. And you'd click OK. I don't want to do that, so I'm just going to turn off that filter. But I do want to crop this out, so I am going to come back to the crop tool, crop this out. Great. Nope. It's doing this like where it kind of grabs. That's a setting that I could change, but I just don't want to do that right now. Okay, so now I'm pretty happy with where I'm at. I would come through and add a levels layer to select my black point and my white point, right? So I'm looking at my histogram. My black point could come up through a little more if I want to add more contrast, but I'm kind of wanting to preserve that detail again in her jeans, so I'm not going to overdo it. I'm going to leave it something like that. And my white point looks all right. I don't want to come in too much on that because the sky's already really hot. Okay, great. So, and then again, yeah, I would come in and do the spot healing brush for sure to get all this dust out of here. And then when I was happy with my image, I would come in and sharpen it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to the filters. you can see here that it has some options blurred out, and that's something that you'll notice a lot when you're just learning Photoshop, and it's often because you have a levels layer selected and not your background copy. So I've come back into my background copy, specifically the one that's a smart object. I could also make these edits here and it would allow me to do so, but I just preserved this one as like a second chance if I make an edit that goes horribly wrong up here. So I'm just going to add it right on top here. I'm going to come down to Sharpen, and then I'm going to select Smart Sharpen. You can also use Unsharp Mask. They do pretty much the same thing. Okay, so it's going to give you this little preview. And again, it's in color. If you would prefer that this is in black and white throughout the whole process, all you're going to do is, instead of adding a black and white adjustment layer, you're going to select background copy, you're going to come up to image, adjustment, black and white. Okay, back to this. So you can zoom in and out, just select something that you know should be sharp. So what I would love to be sharp in this image is her face. So hopefully I have photographed in a way that'll allow me to do so. You guys have all realized how sometimes you think your image is sharp and then it's not actually. Like this, her face is a hair sharp here, or a hair soft, sorry. So I'm gonna come through here and make these adjustments. So for the amount, you don't generally wanna go above like 200. I normally stay between 100 and 150. Radius, you can adjust, and you can kind of see, I'm gonna zoom in. You can see what these edits do when I zoom in a little bit more. See, that is what we refer to as crunchy. You can also see down here how the grass looks overly sharpened. So you do not want that. So that's why you always leave your radius low. I leave my radius at 0.5. And then for reduce noise, I generally leave that very low too, because it's going to give it this kind of overall like glossy, like photoshopped look. And we don't want that. We want to be subtle. So I leave my reduce noise very low, below 5. And for the amount, this is the one that you can adjust more freely. Again, I should be making these edits at 100%. So you can come through here and just see what you like. It's gonna give me a little preview. That feels a little overly sharpened to me. Again, I'm pretty high, but this image needs a little bit of help, so I'm actually gonna leave it closer to, see if I can get away with 200. Okay, and I leave this at lens blur. Okay, so it'll click OK. It'll think about it. Takes a minute to apply the filter. Okay, great. And you've got it down here. So you could click that on and off. Again, you want to do the sharpening at the very end of your workflow. That's just what you should do. Okay, those are the two things that I wanted to show you guys today. So please let me know if there's other functions that you would like to learn in Photoshop. I would love to do those for you. I think I am going to do a little demo on Bridge, and I can do some, well, I kind of take that back. I think we're just going to keep it to Photoshop and Bridge for the time being. Again, thank you for bearing with me as I figure this out as we go along. So I hope you guys are doing well, and get in touch by email if you need anything.